Hello, everyone. My name is Arpit, and I am a PhD student at UNSW Maths and Stats. I am supervised by Dr. Rohitash Chandra, Dr. Sahani Pathiraja, and Professor Lucy Marshall. My research focuses on enhancing hydrological models using deep learning, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Right, so we all know that hydrological modeling is important because we want to manage water resources efficiently and given the lack of availability, which is why I want to talk about how, rather than talking about why it's important, I'm going to talk about how we model these processes. Right, so hydrological models typically, there are a number of challenges that we try to model using various models that we've developed. But generally, these models can be divided into two types of models. They are data-driven models, which try to leverage as much data that we've collected from historical observations. And there are simulation models, which use our physics understanding of these of underlying processes to model the underlying problem, right? While data-driven models can be pretty accurate and give us reasonable results in the using the data that we've collected, they can be a black box model, which can lead to, which is why they can be hard to interpret, and we cannot really trust these models for long-term predictions, right? So which is why there's a need to bring these worlds together and to try to create more advanced models that can leverage the physical understanding of the simulation-based models and the data-driven power of the data-driven models. Right, so which is why I would like to talk about my first project, which is Deep GR4J. So this is the GR4J hydrological model. This is a rainfall runoff model, which is a very simple but effective rainfall runoff model, which uses four parameters that are calibrated using observations data. Although it's very simple, it's very effective, and it's used in a lot of hydrologic applications. So we developed Deep GR4J, which is a hybridization of deep learning models and GR4J model. And the way we approach this problem is using a ad hoc approach, where a part of the GR4J model, particularly the production storage, is kept from the original GR4J model, but we augment this model with a deep learning model. And what we do is we use the GR4J's production storage to generate some process-based features, which are then concatenated with some observations data, hydrometeorological features, and we create what is called the hybrid feature set. And then we train our deep learning model on this hybrid feature set rather than training it only on observations data. And in practice, then we evaluated this model on Camel's Australia dataset, which is a large collection of hydrometeorological data from over 200 catchments across Australia that covers different variety of catchments, going from arid catchments to really flooded catchments. And after evaluation, what we observed is that, yeah. So if we look at the observation results, we compute the NSE, which is coefficient of determinants, and we observe that the hybrid models, the four variants of hybrid models, outperforms the underlying GR4J and neural network models in most of the catchments, giving a better average performance. And even the minimum and maximum performance is much better for these models. And particularly by augmenting this model with antecedent stream flow, we were able to achieve even better results in a lot of these catchments. Right. So to look at the predictions, we plotted the observations and the predicted values for stream flow of four different catchments from this data set. We've selected four based on their runoff ratios, going from low to high. And particularly what I would like to highlight is, if you look at the catchment with the low runoff ratio, we see that GR4J is actually struggling in low flow areas, some of these areas where the hybridized model is performing much better in these scenarios. Right, so just to wrap this up, we developed a hybrid model. We investigated how well we can predict with the hybrid model using catchment using the Camel's Australia dataset. with variety of catchments. And what we observed was that by augmenting with additional features to this model and leveraging the process-based features, we were actually able to improve upon both the underlying hydrologic model and the machine learning model. Right, so the paper is available if you want to check this out, and the code is also open source available. Right, so moving on to the second part of my project work. So the first work that I talked about was more of an ad hoc approach where we tried to use machine learning to model a sub-process within a conceptual hydrologic model. But for other processes where we only know the physics of the model, we can actually use the physics equations, which is the underlying PD or OD, to directly model them using the observations data. So which is why I would like to transition into the groundwater flow modeling challenge. So if we consider a 3D groundwater flow model, flow equation, this is a transient flow equation which is basically a diffusion equation. And in this case, we do not have spatially varying parameters, but these fixed parameters are vary for different dimensions. So we want to solve this equation for H, which is the hydraulic head, which gives us the depth of water availability in an aquifer. And we have parameters G, S, and K that are fixed based on the observations. Right, so H is the hydraulic head, G is the source term, S is the specific storage, and K models the hydraulic conductivity of the material. Right, so if we consider only a steady state equation where we don't model the hydraulic head to change over time, we get equation 2, which is where we set the right-hand side of the equation to 0. Right, so this is a fairly simple equation to model, but there are a number of challenges. When particularly the challenge that I want to talk about is the computationally intensive challenge. So when we take this model and we want to solve this equation for a large area, traditional methods such as FEM can actually struggle if the resolution is too high. And it requires a lot of computational power to actually solve this equation for large regions, which is where machine learning could actually help. So moving on to physics-informed neural networks. So physics-informed neural networks are neural networks which are specifically designed for physics problems, particularly PD problems. And the way we do this is by augmenting the loss function of the neural network by a PD-driven loss using a Lagrangian in the loss function. Right, so this in the literature, this has been shown to be very effective. But what we can do with this model is that we can use the data generated from our groundwater flow model, such as FEE-flow, on a low resolution. We can try to train a model, a machine learning emulator of these models, to do this inference very fast. And that is what these models can really help us. And we can just train them once, and we can keep on generating inference from these models very quickly. So that's what we did in the study. So for a very baseline simple study, we took some predictions of steady state groundwater flow equation from FEE-flow on aquifer, which is present at the shore of an island somewhere in Pacific. And we trained a pin model using 60% of the data set that is shown over here. And then we extrapolated the data to the entire region. And what you see is that the pin is actually able to model the groundwater level pretty well. But there are certain regions that are highly prone to error, such as the edge of the island and the tip of the island, which are mostly on the boundaries of this island. Right, so what this says is that we can actually use machine learning emulators to capture the underlying physics well. But there's a lot of work that we need to do moving on from here, right? So we only solved a very simple steady state problem. But for the next parts of this research, we want to focus on operator learning for 3D groundwater flow problem, where we can not just model transient flow, but we can also model spatially varying coefficients and spatially varying parameters, which are obviously present and not really modeled. Thank you so much.